Hello everyone, and welcome to the Introduction to the Center for the Study of Adult Literacy. My name is Myra Thomas, and I am a research assistant for the American Institutes for Research. I will be the technical moderator for this event. Before we begin the presentation, I will review a few things. First, all phone lines will be muted during the event. If you have a question during the presentation, you can submit to everyone through the chat feature at the bottom right corner of the screen. If you're seeing this webinar but cannot hear it, click on the Quick Start tab on the top left corner of the screen, then click Teleconference for the call-in information. Finally, this event will be recorded and made available for review on the CSAL website. Now I'm pleased to introduce Larry Condelli from AIR, who will introduce today's event.
Thank you, Myra, and I would also like to welcome you all for this webinar to introduce the Center for the Study of Adult Literacy. I am the managing director here at AIR, American Institutes for Research, in charge of the adult literacy projects. And we're also a partner with the center for this project. We are the dissemination providers. Our job is to help spread the word about the center, the work the center does, and ultimately its findings. And I'm here today with the four principals for the center, as well as Meredith Larson from IES. And we're going to start with a welcome from Meredith.
Hi, I'm Meredith Larson, and I am the program officer for this research program, and I work for the National Center for Education Research in the U.S. Department of Education's Institute of Education Sciences. This project represents a $10 million investment in research and development for adult literacy, and we are very proud to support the CSAL group and feel that this center is an important step forward for the field of research and, more importantly, in the lives of these adult learners. I have worked with adults similar to those involved in these studies and seen how much their lives can be improved civically, economically, and personally as they become stronger readers and master complex, abstract skills like reading. Now, we at the Institute know that this population of learners is complex and has multiple needs, and we support research for all struggling adult learners. However, we have charged this group to work with a specific set of questions in this complex problem. Specifically, we have asked them to learn about the motivational and cognitive characteristics of struggling adult learners reading at the 3rd to 8th grade level, to adapt a research-based reading curriculum for them, and to build an online interactive tutor for them. And I personally feel very confident that they are going to succeed in this mission. If you do have any questions about the type of research we at the Institute of Education Sciences support, please feel free to look us up on the web. We are at ies.ed.gov. And again, my name is Meredith Larson, and with that, I'm very happy to turn it back over.
Thank you, Meredith. And we're also pleased to have with us Cheryl Keenan from the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Vocational and Adult Education. And Cheryl is the Director of the Division of Adult Education and Literacy. And she also would like to welcome you and greet you. So we're going to turn it over to her. We'll unmute your phone right now, Cheryl.
Hello. It's glad to be with you today. Am I all clear here?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, great. It's my pleasure to be here today and to participate in this webinar. As you know, I'm the director of the Division of Adult Education and Literacy, which funds the very large state grant program under which most of our literacy instruction in the United States takes place under. You also may know that here in the Office of Vocational and Adult Education, we have a very long tradition of advancing reading, and that we are very, very strong advocates of improving the reading skills of our country's adults, understanding the importance of reading as a gatekeeper skill in their success as adults in many aspects of their lives. We've also enjoyed partnerships with our research arm here in the Department of Education at the Institute of Ed Sciences, and we're very happy to be close partners in this new venture. We certainly do look forward to learning from the Center's findings and drawing upon those findings to enrich all of our efforts, our common efforts towards reading, with a particular focus, which I believe you will find to be intriguing, of looking at a little bit of a lower level reader and the implications of technology in that. So we look forward to helping the Center in many different ways, offering not only spiritual support and collegial support, but also with some concrete things like making contact with state programs and disseminating findings of the report among our large adult education system in the United States. So I'm very happy to be here with you today, and I thank you very much, and I turn it back to Larry.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. We're glad to have you and the department staff listening in today. I'm now going to turn it over to our 4 presenters today who are in the room with us here at AIR. We'll introduce themselves, and then we'll start the presentation.
Hi, I'm Jan Freiters from Brock University in Canada.
I'm Maureen Levitt from the Hospital for Sick Children in the University of Toronto, also in Canada.
Daphne Greenberg from Georgia State University.
Art Gracer, University of Memphis.
Okay, we're going to get started now, and our first presenter will be Daphne, who will begin the slideshow.
Thank you, Larry, and thank you to all of you out in the audience for joining us. I would like to thank AIR for hosting this webinar, to IES for making the Center a reality, and to OVE for all of their continued support. As you can see on this slide, we have many investigators associated with this project that you will be listening to Jan, Maureen, Art, and I talk. We're part of the principal investigator group. Lee Branham Martin was not able to join us today, but he's definitely here in spirit. And in the next slide, you will see that we have many advisors basically representing different aspects. We have people from the adult literacy field, from general education. We have researchers, we have practitioners, and we also have partners, both from Times and AIR. So today we're going to give you basically an overall idea about our plans for the Center, and would like to start with the mission statement, which is basically that we want to focus on understanding the reading-related characteristics that are critical to helping our adult learners reach their reading goals. And we're also going to be developing an instructional approach that is tailored to their needs and interests. And I think that you will see that both aspects are going to be focused on during this slideshow. We have different projects that we are planning to do through our 5 years. Today we're only going to be talking about the first 2 bullets, basically what we're trying to explore in terms of the underlying skills of our adult learners when it comes to reading, and also the refinement and development of our reading curriculum. And now I'm going to hand it over to Jan to talk through the next 2 slides for us.
Excellent. Thank you, Daphne. We're starting with Hollis Scarborough's reading rope as one of our guiding metaphors. It really helped us to decide which assessments to give, and it's providing us with starting points for designing our instruction. The aspect of the study covers the how of reading. How does this remarkably complex and powerful skill fit together? Because reading becomes really powerful when all these strands fit together. Now, when it does go well, how does reading work? Well, if you start from the right side of the rope and unravel toward the left, the individual strands or threads of the rope start distinguishing themselves until there are 2 big groups of strands. The first of these, and you can see them listed at the top left, language comprehension, is made of features of language-based skills and knowledge that the reader brings to the reading task. As these develop, or if they start out broken and are improved through instruction, reading becomes, and you can see the flow back to the right, increasingly strategic, flexible management of reading challenges. The second big strand at the bottom are the skills that people use for individual words. and even the sound and print parts of words. And as these develop, or if they start out broken and are improved through instruction, reading becomes increasingly automatic, or faster and more accurate. The second part of our study is motivation in terms of the broad categories of things. Why does motivation play a critical role in literacy learning? Well, motivation is a whole other side of things. You may have noticed something about the reading rope on the previous slide. It just sat there. It didn't do anything useful, like tie a sail to a mast or spin around in the air so a child could play jump rope. When you say to yourself that you could be reading more, but you do other things. When an adult struggling reader wants to improve his or her skill but doesn't even try, these are the why of reading. This is the motivation side of things and the other theme of our approach. In the area of struggling adults, motivation is not heavily studied, and there's a reason for this. As you can imagine, the very first focus with an adult who's struggling to acquire reading skills is to get those skills up. Second concern has traditionally been, okay, what thinking skills are needed to support this? So that leads to why motivation has not been heavily studied, part 2. To a researcher, it is messy, messy, messy. Motivation sits there somewhere between pure emotion and pure thought, but it also changes depending on the learning situation. So you can see our three foci there. What are the stable dispositions or tendencies? Second, when a struggling reader experiences success or failure, what kind of things do they say to themselves? What attributions that will change how they approach new reading tasks? And third, what is the role of memorable experiences with reading, good and bad, for current engagement with reading? What kinds of affective episodes or memories do people have with reading experiences? We have a fourth aspect of motivation, but I'm going to leave that to Art Gracer to talk about because it has a lot to do with his bit. So testing or assessment is the main concern of our first phase, but it informs all of our activities. Reading and language assessments are really well developed for children. Even for smaller groups across the population, such as children with reading disabilities. However, many assessment devices were either developed for children and or are not tested for use with adults. So we have a few goals in our assessment, the first of which is to see how all these measures, how the how of reading and language actually work or don't work with struggling adult readers. And the second is the actual question of how all these skills, traits, and abilities look individually and in relation to each other. For example, are there groups of struggling adult readers who are similar to each other that can inform instruction? So what are we going to actually do? We're working with 500 adult literacy students evenly distributed across Atlanta, Georgia, and Toronto, Canada. We're recruiting volunteer participants between the 3rd and 8th grade reading levels, both non-native and native speakers of English. And now I'll turn it back over to Daphne Greenberg, who will talk about some of the specifics of the how of reading that we will be assessing.
And I would like to remind everybody that if you have any questions, please type them in, and we're going to reserve time at the end of this webinar to address some of the questions. So, as many of you know, there are both lower level and higher level components of reading, and you will see on the screen a few examples of the lower level components of reading that we plan to tackle. There's things such as sound awareness, awareness of the smallest unit of language that conveys meaning, sounding out words, sight word reading, receptive and expressive vocabulary. We're also going to be looking at higher level components of reading, things such as both text and listening comprehension, general knowledge and background information, reasoning, and memory. And what's very exciting to me is that some but not all of these constructs have been studied with adult literacy students, but what's especially interesting is that we're going to be looking at them in combination with each other. And so we're going to be looking at how do, let's say, memory and reasoning and phonological awareness and oral comprehension, morphological awareness, how do all of these things work together to end up presenting us with the students that we see in front of us in the classroom. And Jan is going to now talk about the other aspects that we're also going to be looking at.
So what we're going to actually be specifically looking at in motivational functioning we've worked with motivation researchers and selected a few of the best, well-validated measures of motivation. And you can see them listed there: the expectancy value questionnaire, the intrinsic motivation inventory, the reading motivation scale. We are also going to be doing a qualitative short interview to get essentially a natural history of memorable emotional events that have happened around reading in the past, both positive and negative. And we'll also be developing a measure of the reasons readers give for their successes and failures, developed with authentic reading scenarios. Also, you can see the last three things on this slide. Based on Daphne Greenberg's past studies, we'll be looking at demographics, the critical daily reading practices and habits that struggling readers have, and because the computer will play such an important role in our instruction development, also computer familiarity. Now, our general philosophy is guided broadly by two motivation theories. You can see them there: competence motivation and self-determination theory. And what this does for us is it guides us to the ideas around motivation that we think are going to vary from adult to adult and can help us design our instructional approach. Even broader than this is our general perspective that all learners should feel that the instructional experience meets their needs, interests, and goals. So, to do that, these two broad perspectives have implications for our instructional development process. We plan on incorporating three major features to our development: interest, control, and choice. Control and choice and interest are all tools used to support autonomy, which the research has showed that when combined with continuous feedback on progress through skill development really leads to the best learning outcomes. Now I'm going to turn the slides over to Maureen Lovett, who will provide much more detail on the instructional aspects.
As a starting point in developing our instructional framework for this center, we know that we need to begin with a model, an evidence-based model of what our adult learners need to be learning to improve their reading skills. We know that to be effective with our adult learners, our instruction will have to meet their needs and their goals, and whenever possible to be tied to their individual goals and profiles and preferences. We're aware of the many challenges that will be involved in going down this road. For instance, although we know that our instruction must be relevant to their individual goals, that choice of reading materials will be important to them, and designing and using materials of interest in the lessons will be a priority. We will also, to help them move down the path to become more proficient readers, need to effectively address the many gaps in foundational skills that they may exhibit. There are difficulties in having effective reading strategies, and some of the gaps in knowledge and failure to have knowledge of how certain text materials are structured. Our goals overall in developing our instructional framework are to maximize the outcomes that every adult learner will experience from whatever time they can devote to instruction and practice of their literacy skills. As Daphne mentioned with our testing framework, there are parallels in components of our instructional framework, different levels of component reading skills and language skills that will be explored and enhanced as part of our instruction so that our adult learners can move down and develop this reading rope, as Yun mentioned earlier in this presentation. Our instruction will work to help adult learners fill in gaps in word attack abilities and decoding strategies. We'll work with learners who have limited vocabulary knowledge to build up this aspect of language competence. We'll teach conventions that writers use to form different text structures and messages, and will overall attempt to help adult learners acquire the strategic reading behaviors they need to realize their literacy goals. We will individualize our instruction through the use of an intelligent tutoring technology developed by Art Gracer, and to follow this part of our webinar. In all of our instructional approaches, there will be 3 instructional themes. The first is a skill-building theme. We will work to provide systematic, cumulative, and scaffolded skills instruction in as efficient and effective way as possible to enable our adult learners to generalize and transfer new learning and achieve their literacy goals. Another instructional theme that will weave through our reading curriculum is that we will teach our learners to acquire effective reading strategies to achieve their goals. And there will be a metacognitive component in which we will help them learn how to monitor the effectiveness of strategies and make use of their reading time wisely. Finally, as in the work that Yun has outlined, there is always a strong motivational theme in our instruction so that we build and enhance adaptive motivational attitudes and beliefs about learning. For our adult literacy instruction program and instructional framework, we have as a jumping off point a reading intervention program that we developed and evaluated in our Toronto site for struggling readers who reached high school reading many years below their grade level. This program, called in its rollout form Empower Reading for High School, and in its research form Fast Paces for High School, was designed specifically to address literacy learning problems in adolescents. And these adolescents were reading at exactly the same grade levels of proficiency as the adult learners we will be seeing and serving in our center. In the high school program that we have run for many years, there are 2 main sets of instructional tracks. The first is a decoding and word identification track for those who lack basic skills in word reading and decoding and letter sound knowledge. The second focuses exclusively on building good comprehenders and has 2 instructional tracks. A text knowledge track in which we teach conventions both at a small and larger grain level that authors use to structure their communication to readers, and a comprehension strategy track where we explicitly teach struggling readers to use strategies that more effective and efficient readers use to enhance comprehension. In an efficacy study that we evaluated of our high school program, we found that students who had 1 semester of Fast Paces or Empower High School teaching made significant gains relative to a control group on a waiting list for instruction, significant gains on standardized achievement tests, tapping, word attack, word reading, and text comprehension dimensions of reading acquisition. We went back a year after we had finished our instruction with these adolescents and saw whether or not they maintained their gains or their advantage had in fact decreased since the program ended. We were very gratified to find that they hadn't maintained their advantage from participating in the program, and in fact that passage comprehension skills had showed continued growth over time. In the Center's project on instructional design, we will use this high school program just as a starting or jumping off point to inform the development of our instructional framework for adult learners. But we will take many new directions in an attempt to meet more effectively the specific needs and the heterogeneous needs of our adult learner population. Some of the instruction in our literacy classes will be delivered by traditional human instructors in small group instructional formats, but some, particularly reading comprehension instruction, a majority of the comprehension instruction, will be delivered in a unique way using an intelligent tutoring system called AutoTutor, developed by our colleague Art Gracer. And I'll turn to Art now to give you details both on our attempt to build a text repository for our adult learners and on the AutoTutor system itself. Art?
Thank you, Maureen. And I want to start out by reminding everybody that if you have a question, feel free to type it in the kind of question facility that we have in this webinar. Okay, text selection is critical. If we're going to promote better instruction, a careful selection of text is paramount. The text needs to be interesting because dropout rate is very critical with struggling adult readers. It has to be relevant to their lives. It has to satisfy their goals. The difficulty of the text matters. If it's too difficult, you'll better need some scaffolding. You may want it to be at an intermediate zone, not too difficult or not too easy, but just right. We call that the Goldilocks principle. And sometimes to build self-efficacy, you want them to give them easy text. So the text selection is critical. We also live in a world of different genres and media. Sometimes text comes in just a book form, sometimes it's newspapers, it's in various electronic media like the web. So we have to consider many of these technologies, including Facebook. Yeah. So that raises all sorts of questions. What texts are to be selected and why? What texts are available? There may be repositories existing, or there may be some out of the government or various commercial sources. How do you rate the text for relevance or level? How do you get a big repository? You know, one dream we've all had is to build the interventions around their interest. So if they're interested in a particular topic, and then you fold, practice around that, you're going to have a better success than just kind of forcing pre-selected text on the students. So one of the researchers at University of Memphis, Mark Conley, has been working with Daphne and the rest of us to build a repository. And because what we need to do is to find out what they're interested in and then build a repository around that. And so we might look to publishers and government agencies and various centers and local adult literacy centers for good candidates. And you can annotate these on various interest levels and topics. For example, is it in health or employment? What sort of topic is it about? The tasks, like filling out forms, employment forms, and other sort of forms, that's a task. And also you have difficulty level. And the text difficulty, once again, becomes important because you don't want the text to be too difficult or too easy, but just right. And so how do you scale it? And the answer is we're going to use this system called Cometrics T. T stands for Text Easeability Assessor. And so to give you an example, and this is an example website that you can use for free. This was developed by myself and Danielle McNamara at University of Memphis. And we also have a lot of collaborators like Zhifeng Kai. We call him Carl. He helped us develop this. And it's T stands for Text Easeability Assessor, but the main label is Cometrics. And what you do is you go to this site and you put in a text. And then you press a button to analyze it. And you can analyze it on 4 main dimensions. In addition to Flesch-Kincaid grade level, you get a dimension of narrativity versus informational text. You have syntactic simplicity versus complexity. You have word concreteness versus abstractness. You have referential cohesion, and you have deep cohesion. So what we're going to do is take all these texts, and we've been collecting, I think, thousands of them, according to Mark Conley, and they're all scaled, and we're hoping this repository can be used to recommend text to people to match their interests. So that's one sort of angle to using technology on the project. Next one. The AutoTutor is the other major technology. And this AutoTutor is a system that helps people learn by holding conversations in natural language. So you have these talking heads, these conversational agents, and they can be in various forms, whether it's cartoonish or realistic. But the main part is the conversational element, because it can interpret to some extent the natural language that the student enters, and then it adaptively responds. It intelligently responds as an intelligent tutoring system. The goal is to have this on a browser online so people anywhere can be able to use it. We want it to be just not text like in a Kindle or something, but to have many types of media, diagrams, videos, games, social media. That's the goal. And the adult can communicate by either typing, speaking to some extent. Speaking is going to be experimental, or pointing or clicking. Okay, next one. Sometimes 2 heads are better than 1. Sometimes 3 heads are better than 1. So talking to multiple agents can really make the interaction much more lively. And the agents can take on different roles. You can have a teacher role, you can have a fellow student role. Sometimes the role can be a student who's struggling and the human tries to help them. Sometimes the fellow agent can be a very accomplished tutor or an accomplished student, and to model good reading skills. So I'm not going to go into all the details on how this works, but I just want to say that the system has to be able to evaluate what the student types in, the meaning of it, and respond appropriately. It also has to exhibit conversation patterns and giving intelligent feedback. It questions the student. It gives them hints. It elicits its information with prompts. It fills in missing pieces of information. These are all part of the conversation patterns that we've investigated over the years. And in fact, the AutoTutor, I think now has been going for 16 years now, and there's been other systems developed at University of Memphis with my colleague Sheng-Yin Hu and Andrew Only and many others. We've been developing these systems, and we know these work. We now want to see how they work with struggling adult readers. And I might say that it's important to have these agents because if there's one thing we know, the social interaction that exists with these struggling adult readers is very critical. This can keep them going and motivated and try to minimize the dropout. Sometimes multiple agents can model good learning skills through vicarious learning. The students can learn. Other times you can try to get the human to try to teach another agent. So these multiple agent trialogues, as we call them, are very powerful. We, in addition, want multiple media. Many of us think that Facebook would be an interesting sort of model. There's some evidence, informal evidence, talking with people at various literacy centers, that Facebook and the connections with other people socially can be quite motivating. Next one. Okay, now our goal is to create many of these lessons. I know Maureen Lovett and I have talked about 100 hours of lessons. I don't know whether it'll be 50 or 100, but we want these to be available on the web. And to do this, you need authoring tools. We have to figure out a way in a short period of time to create these lessons. You have to define the agents, who are the agents, what's the ethnicity, what's the gender. You have to define the types of student input, the type of texts. You have to set up the conversation right. You need your conversational rules, and you've got to link to the various media. And so we've developed this AutoTutor script authoring tool to do just that. And so now I'd like to turn it back to Daphne.
Thank you, Art. So I hope that you have at least a general idea of our plans. And this webinar is our first attempt to disseminate what we plan to do. There are two other things that are in the works. First of all, I hope that you can those of you who are joining, who are attending COABE will join me. I'm presenting about the center on March 28th at 3:30 p.m. And we also are going to be launching our website. And as you can see on this slide, that is our address. And it should be launched in the next few days, or at least within the next week. If you go there right now, you will see our splash page with the announcement that it's going to be launched in the next few days or next week. And you'll also see the logos from all the different universities that are involved with this. What our plans for the website, we struggle with, at what time do you launch a website? Do you wait until you have everything? Do you just put out something? And so we try to have a website for the launching date that would have enough information to get people interested, but of course we're not yet up and ready to have everything that we want there. Eventually what we want to have is information for teachers, for researchers, for learners, for policymakers. And so right now, the types of things that you will see when it is launched is that you will see the bios of everyone who's involved. You'll be able to see a list of all of our tests and some description about the tests and where you can find them on the Internet to purchase them if you wanted. You will be able to read an overview of our center. You will also be able to access the different publications that many of us have written that have led to our thinking about how to structure this center. What we don't have yet, and we also are going to have we also have some news stories out there about our center. What we don't have yet, and we're hoping to have pretty soon, is the beginnings of our repository. So we want to make it so that anybody out there, whether you're a teacher or an adult learner, will be able to click on our text repository and have access to different web-based texts that are divided up by reading levels, by topic interests, and so forth. That won't be ready by the time we launch, but parts of it will be ready pretty soon thereafter. Also, I just wanted to share with you where we are at this very moment in terms of what we've been doing. So we have actually begun testing students, and I'm pleased to say that that's going very well. And Art and Maureen are very, they're working very, very hard on curriculum development. So we feel like we're on task, and we are exactly where we want to be. So we're going to now see if whether or not we can turn to video and see if, because we thought it might be neat for all of you to actually connect our names with faces, and there we are. So I'm waving, and I'm Daphne. Maybe other people want to wave and say who you are so they know who you are.
I'm Maureen.
I thought I was Maureen. I'm Art.
And I'm Jan.
Everybody else around the room, you want to quickly just say who you are?
Delphinia Brown.
Hi, Larry.
Hi, Myra Thomas. Meredith Larson from IES.
Okay, and so now we can go to some of the questions that you've typed in, and if you have any other questions, you can still type them in. So a few of you wanted to know about whether the slides from this PowerPoint will be available, and yes, the slideshow will be available on our website. It will take, I guess, anywhere from a few days to a week or 2 weeks to actually get the recording onto the website, but eventually you will be able to see the PowerPoint and hear it as well. There was a question about how we're related to STAR, and if you have any questions about how our project relates to any of the Department of Ed projects, what would probably make a lot of sense is to contact Meredith Larson. And Meredith, if you can give the URL again, how they can contact you.
So the Institute of Education Sciences is at ies.ed.gov. And my center is the National Center for Education Research. I'm Meredith Larson, and I'm the Program Officer for Adult Education. So you can find me that way, or meredith.larson@ed.gov.
Okay, and when our website is launched, if you didn't quite get the URL, you will be able to contact Meredith through our website through her bio. Okay, somebody wants to know how our research goes beyond, utilizes and/or goes beyond the NIFL research on the 4 components of reading as described in Applying Research in Reading Instruction for Adults of 2005. That's a really good question. So when we worked on our ideas for this project and for the center, we definitely relied on past research on adult literacy, and definitely relied on that book because there's a lot of good research that's quoted there. But what's really neat about what we're going to do is that we're going to extend what we already know about the strengths and weaknesses of our adults who are reading between the 3rd and the 8th grade levels by looking at more aspects that are related to reading. So, for example, there's very, very little research done in the area of morphological awareness, very little research done on reasoning, on memory. I know that a very hot topic lately, especially for people who are working with adults at the higher ends, such as the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, the pre-GED or the GED students, is the whole notion about general knowledge and background information and how that is so critical to students being able to do well on the GED. And so we're going to be testing what is their general knowledge and background information, and there's very, very little information on that. And in addition, we're also going to be looking at self-esteem, motivation, and those kinds of issues as well. So I think that we're really going to be extending the previous research that's reported in the NIFL book. And Jan, would you like to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in. You know, the NIFL document does a really great job of covering good standard practice for instruction. But one area where it's really thin is what are the motivational frameworks that you can use to optimize the instructional environment? How can you set up a learning experience that really taps into the motivation of the adult struggling reader?
Thank you. Okay, on to the next question. Yes, I already answered that it will be archived on our website, this webinar, so you will be able to watch it again or share with others. Okay, so somebody wanted to know, were the participants in the high school study screened for learning disabilities? Maureen, would you like to take care of that one?
Sure. The participants in the high school study did not require a clinical or psychoeducational diagnosis of having a learning disability, but to be a participant and to receive the instruction, they received a screening assessment which indicated that their reading achievement was several years below what would be expected for their age and grade level. So they made what we call a low achievement criterion definition of a reading disability in that sense. Some of them had co-occurring diagnoses of attentional problems or learning problems, but that didn't include or exclude them. To qualify for participation, they were all significantly underachieving in reading.
Thank you. Let's see what else there is here. Okay, will all the repository materials be free for users? Yes, anything that we post on our website for the text repository for adult learners will be materials that the adult learners can access through our website. What is the website address in case you didn't have a chance to jot it down? It is csal.gsu.edu. And I will be advertising it all over the place. So in case you didn't see it or get it right now, you will be seeing it all over the place. Let's see. There is a question about, the question is, will we be disseminating findings along the way or not until the entire study is done? Our plans are to share our findings along the way. Obviously there are no findings yet. We just got funded in September. So at the COABE conference this year, I will be talking in more detail about our plans. But in future years, when I present at conferences or my colleagues present at conferences, we will definitely be sharing what we are finding and what we are learning. And of course, we will also use the website to share our findings. Then there's a question about when will AutoTutor be available to our state programs, or is it already available? The program that we're developing, and that is the key we are developing, is not already available because we're developing it. And one thing to keep in mind about what we're doing is that we have been funded in terms of the curriculum, to really focus on development and then feasibility studies of whether or not our curriculum is feasible to implement in authentic adult literacy programs. And then we end our 2 years with pilot studies. Does this program seem to work? Is it something that shows promise? And then after that, what would have to wait until a future research project, future funding, etc., is to actually do what are called efficacy studies, where you go out and really study this with large sample sizes and so forth to see, is it really effective? Is it really better, quote unquote, than other programs? And it's at that point that we would be then making the program available if we can show through efficacy studies that AutoTutor and everything else that we're developing in our grant, in our center, really is something that would be effective. So, and that would be after this particular 5 years are over. And Art, yes?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention we've developed about a dozen AutoTutor-like systems in the past, and we've shown learning gains, including reading. One of Danielle's McNamara's system called iStart shows reading gains with middle school and up through college. And they have agents also. And AutoTutor, and we have Guru Tutor and Deep Tutor on physics, and we've consistently shown learning gains. What's unique about this effort is it's focusing and targeting on struggling adult readers. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Somebody wanted to know what are the benefits to using an automated tutor versus a human one. And I will let Art handle that one after I just say that one of the things that one of our motivators in terms of doing something like this is that we all know that a lot of our students and learners can't always attend class. And sometimes they have to miss class for periods of weeks. But a lot of them really want to continue studying, and so one of the promises that we're hoping that we'll actually see become reality is the fact that students will be able to access the auto tutor from their home if they have internet access, maybe from libraries, from their children's schools, from their workplaces, wherever they can get to the internet, and they can do it 24/7. So that is one of the benefits that we see to using an auto tutor kind of program rather than a human tutor.
Exactly. And the one other aspect is the auto tutor can exhibit good strategies. So imagine the auto tutor showing how it's reading better and interacting and explaining to other agents and to the human how it's doing it. So it's showing. And one thing we know is many of the teachers don't understand comprehension at deeper levels, what the strategies are and how to implement these strategies effectively. Well, this can be modeled with AutoTutor and hopefully improve the strategy instruction throughout the globe, actually. Yeah.
And that isn't to say that there won't be a human instructional component. We will not just have a teacher avatar, but also a real live teacher in the class. So this will be a combination of auto-tutor-based instruction and small group instruction from the teacher.
Okay, one of the next questions is, it seems that most of your research has been conducted with high school age students. So actually I would like to clarify that all of my research is actually on adults and adult literacy students. But you're right, in this webinar we did focus on a curriculum that was tested out with high school students who are reading at the same levels of students that we are targeting. But all of our testing and all of our curriculum decisions are based on what we know about adult learners. So I do want to clarify that. And then the person went on to say that there seems to be a great divide in ability between those with younger minds and those adults in their 30s and older. And you're absolutely right. The age issue is one of the challenges in developing a curriculum for adult learners. You can have a 16-year-old sitting next to a 75-year-old in an adult literacy classroom. And that is one of the things that we are going to look at very, very carefully, both in our analysis of the assessment data and on developing curriculum. In fact, it's kind of funny that you bring it up, because just earlier today we were trying to figure out what would be a text, a passage, for example, what would be a topic that would be of interest to, let's say, an 18-year-old male and a 61-year-old woman. And you know, it's really a very, very interesting and challenging question, one that we are going to be tackling. Let's see. Yes, we are going to, somebody wanted to know if the repository is going to have materials for individuals to download. Yes, we will, and it will be specified by appropriate reading levels. And we're struggling also right now with what kind of levels to put up on the web. Do we put up NRS levels? Do we put up Cometrics information? And so forth and so forth. So that's one of the issues. But definitely it is going to be divided up by topic and by reading levels. Our success is, this is a question, our success, quote unquote, is gauged via TABE scores. How do you see the TABE test reflecting student achievement in this curriculum? I'm glad you asked that. So one of the things that we're collecting, in addition to the assessments that we're doing, we're collecting whatever tests the adult literacy programs are administering. the test scores. So some programs, for example, use the TABE, some use the GAIN, and so forth. And we definitely do want to take a look at how does the TABE or the GAIN or whatever test it is interact or reflect student achievement in our curriculum, because we know that that's of major importance, because adult literacy programs need to know if their students are making progress vis-a-vis the TABE or GAIN scores or other types of tests. What sort of professional development will you be doing with the human instructors in your study? We are definitely going to be doing professional development. That's only going to happen, though, in about year 3 of our study. So we haven't quite figured all the details out yet. So stay tuned. It will be either described at conferences or in the next webinar or on the website. Somebody wanted to know, you are researching those at 3rd to 8th grade levels. Why are you not considering at least the 9th or 10th grade reading levels? So that is a really good question and kind of makes me want to chuckle, because just a week or 2 ago, someone emailed me with the same kind of beginning sentence. You are researching those reading at the 3rd to 8th grade levels. Why are you not considering those that are reading at the 1st or 2nd grade levels? So as Meredith explained in the very beginning of this webinar, we are contracted to study very, very specific samples, populations, and topics. What happens with an IES grant is that you write a proposal, and in that proposal, you have to justify, you have to explain to the reviewers why you think that you are able to actually conduct the study that you're about to conduct. So we looked around the room, so to speak, and realized that our expertise is mainly at the 3rd to 8th grade levels. And so that is why we chose that level. It's not to say that the 1st or 2nd grade level isn't important, or the 9th or 10th grade level isn't important, or any other kind of adult literacy group that you can divide it up. You know, as we know, the adult literacy population is so heterogeneous. That's what makes it both challenging and exciting at the same time. And so we decided to focus on the individuals that we have the most research and teaching experience with, but that's not to say that the other groups are not important. And I know that Meredith, she's a really big advocate for adult literacy at IES, and she would love to see people propose research proposals in the area, in the lower level and in the upper level. So I encourage all of you, to pair up with researchers, and researchers to pair up with practitioners, because that's what makes the strongest proposal, when practitioners and researchers work together, and to come up with proposals that IES will consider funding in terms of the lower level or the upper level. And I don't know, Meredith, if there's anything else you wanted to say about that.
We're also interested in English language learners, math, all levels, professional development, policy. So really anything that can help the adult learners. We have grants for building partnerships between practitioners and researchers to help them formulate an idea. There are lots of opportunities, and there's even more need. So if you have questions about, like I know that the STAR came up, and there might be other questions you have about how things might affect professional development. I might be able to find you information about that and provide you some avenues for just more research that has been done or that could be done. So whatever topic you have, I might have a place for you to go.
Okay, we have time for just about one more question, and somebody wanted to know if we have practitioner partners in this project. Yes, we do. So, for example, in Memphis, there are a group of practitioners that are meeting with that group to help inform. We're going to be setting up something similar to that in Georgia, and I know that in Canada they have similar kinds of plans. So we're going to have a practitioner who will be an advisor, an official advisor paid on our project, and we also have an adult learner who's an advisor on our project as well. And eventually, when we have the bios of these people on our web, you will be able to check them out. And one thing that I did want to let everybody know, that either today or tomorrow you will be receiving an email with a survey of just 5 questions that we hope that you'll take the time to fill out and answer. It will help inform future webinars. We really do want your feedback. If there are any questions that we did not answer today that either you were shy about typing in, or with my quick scanning, I didn't notice that you asked, please put it on that survey and we will definitely answer those questions. We also plan to have a frequently asked questions section to our website. It's not up yet, but we will definitely have that, and hopefully your questions will be answered there as well. On the website, there will always be a contact form where you can also ask questions. We want to try to be as accessible as we can and also as responsive to any concerns, questions, or comments you have. So I would like to thank all of you for joining us. I know we're all very busy, and you took out a whole hour of your day today to spend time with us. And I know that on behalf of all of us, we thank you for sharing and for being with us. And I hope to see as many of you as possible at COABE.
Thank you, everyone. We hope to have you again in future webinar and sessions about the project. So goodbye now.